Hi YouTube, we're back with part 6 on the ASH26 LED nav light project. Where we last left off, we were working on the red light. We had just taped over the top of the wire reluctantly, very reluctantly. And the only thing that I did after the video ran out of memory is I added a couple more drips of CA here. And as you guys can probably imagine, sometimes that's the, well, pretty much always that's the ugliest part of the project. Okay, so we've got two leads here, one of which is marked black, meaning it's the one that needs to receive the resistor, which happens to be this one. I don't know if you guys can tell in the video, it's very faint. And so we need to do just like what we did on the tail a couple of videos ago. And that means we need to separate the brown and the red, which carry the power, and then the yellow or the orange, depending on how you want to look at that. That's what carries the signal, which in this case it's pulse with modulation. Okay, so this is getting warm, the soldering iron. Which somebody asked me the other day what size I use for this, and this is just a Weller. I believe it's a 40-watt iron. It's got 3 lights. These things will work for me for about a year or so. They're like 16 bucks, if I recall, and it doesn't come with this little thing. That's a holder I got from a long time ago. And the one thing about these is that the tips have a screw, so you would unscrew that, and then the tip will come out. And I don't often change tips. I do have a fine tip here, and then I will eventually wear out the tip on this one. It's getting pretty close. But I don't usually go way out of my way to do that for a variety of reasons. But that's the way I handle it, because obviously if you got a $16 arrangement, you don't have all that much money tied up in the actual soldering iron. So instead of spending like $4 or $5 on a tip, you can just replace the iron periodically. Unless, of course, you go between different tip sizes, because you do a lot of fine stuff and then more coarse stuff. So, alright, so now I just need to get my, I have some current limiting resistors that I need to get. Okay guys, so this is my green LED, and it needs 180 ohms of resistance in this application. And this is my red LED, or for the red lights. For the red LEDs, this is my resistor. It's going to be about 23.5 ohms. I tested it, as opposed to just going by the markings. But interestingly enough, I seem to have misplaced my other one. So I'm going to keep searching for it while I work. But for now, luckily, this was the one I needed, and I was about ready to put the one that was needed for my green LEDs first, and that would have been a tragic event. Okay, so we've got this servo here. Go ahead and grab a knife. We need to separate out the negative and the positive. Okay, so I'll just do that. Once you get the knife blade through, just kind of walk it forward or backward. See how I'm wiggling it back and forth? That'll open and separate the wires without actually cutting through the protective sheath, hypothetically. You want enough room so that you can get the head of whatever size strippers you use through. And you'll do the same thing here between the signal and the plus voltage. And see, I made it through the sheath on that, so I'll come back over here, and then we'll just use that as our point where we're going to strip the wire. Keep it as perpendicular to the angle there as you can. Now, even though we stripped through the sheath, we still need to make enough room to get the strippers in there. Obviously, you gotta kind of be careful here, because this is critical control surface here. I'm using quite a sharp blade too. It's a regular X-Acto knife, but it's a fairly new blade. Okay, so there's two trains of thought. You can do the hard part first or the hard part second. Doesn't really matter which one to me. I'm just going to go with the hard part first, I guess, meaning I'm going to add the resistor. Now, we don't have a ton of room over there to go. We don't have tons of room to go with our extra cable. So whatever we do, we want to make sure that we can tuck it away so that we don't interfere with the action. But this is so thin that it would probably sit right in front of the servo and be just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and cut it about here, and we'll insert the resistor. And there is a little bit of a trick you can do on these. Because the nature of the size of the resistor lead compared to the size of this wire, I'm probably, I don't know, we got a couple of different ideas, but what I may do is I may just go ahead and use this straight into the servo wire. So I'm just going to kind of twist this wire around here like this, okay? Just getting a lot of contact points, okay? Because remember, this is not a multi-strand wire. And then I'm just going to carry this out a ways and then stop, okay? Keeping in mind that we'll cover this bit with heat shrink here in a minute. So dirty. I don't know what the heck I did with that resistor that I had put together yesterday. It really ticks me off. I don't lose things typically, but evidently I lost this thing. Or it got blown away. I used my saw earlier today. Sometimes things like that will happen in a tight workspace like this. But I went out of my way to make sure I wouldn't lose it. Well, evidently I went out of my way in the wrong direction. Okay, now soldering there might be a little bit dangerous to the finish. So I'm going to just grab a little something to protect the finish, which I would normally use something like this, but because we have a big flat area, I can use a larger piece like this, and then to protect the finish against the metal, we'll just put one of these little sleeves like this under it. We'll just lay this down so it won't damage anything. These are just blocks of foam here, guys. I use those a lot for protecting stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go right in here where I want that joint to be. Then I'm just going to heat it up a lot and put some solder on there. And then we're going to spread the solder back and forth a little bit. And that's pretty well guaranteed to get you a good contact point. I just have a little bit too much solder, so we'll take some of it back with some solder wick. So we'll just heat up this solder wick and let it pull some of that back out. You could also use just another chunk of wire, a braided wire, if you don't have solder wick. Okay, so that's taken care of. Now we can let that cool for just a second. It's only a 22 ohm resistor, so it's almost like having a wire. There's very limited resistance. So this thing's going to be hot on both sides until it cools on both sides, is what I mean. Okay, so now we're going to untwist until we find that it's soldered. And it's evidently soldered there, so we can go ahead and clip that now. And these little leads come in handy, so I just throw them in there in my little bucket of goodies. Okay, so now that we've got that soldered, we can eliminate this wire, the excess wire, verifying one last time that it's got the black mark on it, which I realize you guys probably can't see, but it's black, take my word for it. And then these little pieces, again, come in handy when you're doing testing and stuff, so we'll hang on to that. Then we want to cover this up. I have this white heat shrink here. I don't know if it's going to be big enough. And it's not. So we'll go ahead and put that away. Okay, So now we need to get this resistor tied into the negative, which is brown. So we'll take our strippers. We can slide this over so it's kind of out of the way. In fact, we can just put that out of the way totally. And what we're going to do is we're just going to get these in wherever we need to get them in. It's always tricky because you got to get them into a fairly tight spot. Okay, so then I'm just going to take and bite with this appropriate size. Might go one step more up. And then I'm just going to pull the wire itself. And look at that. We've exposed some of the wire. Okay, then we'll take this, and we do need to get some heat shrink on there actually at this point. So we'll go, I think this green might fit. Let's try cutting a little bit of that. Okay. Okay, so we'll go just beyond where that wire ended. So that way if we melted further back than we realized, we'll be good. And then we'll just take note of where the resistor actually is. It's right next to where our wire is going to go in there. We'll try to do this without the X-Acto knife. But we may need the X-Acto knife, like we did last time. Okay, so now we're between those wires. And we'll just kind of double back once. Once we're doubled back, we can grab a tool like this to help grab that. Kind of pull it. Okay. We'll grab the resistor and we'll pull it the other way. We'll just take this little thing, cut it. Like I said, we'll hang on to that little tail. Now I can kind of twist the wire a little bit, and that'll cinch in that last little bit of extra unused cable. Okay, so you can see we're going to have an exposed portion there, and that's fine for what we're doing because we're going to end up taping over this last little bit rather than try to desolder it inside and all that jazz. You could also just cut the wire and then you could feed heat shrink over it. Okay. So now that we have that soldered on, we got one little sharp point here. And that sharp point, sometimes that gives a spot for the wire to behave badly and poke through whatever you cover it with. So I'm going to take and just touch that once again. It'll push down that high point. Awesome. Okay, so now we're just going to take some heat to it. Shrink the wire. Paying special attention not to overheat toward the end, because you'll melt the varnish off the wire, potentially. Cool, so that's done. So now we can kind of give this its bend that we would like it to have. Because once this cools, it's going to be fairly stiff. Just kind of bend it around the way you think it might need to be. You'll still be able to bend it a little bit. Okay, so now let's take some scissors. I'm tempted to use this. This had a little red spot in it, so we'll just use that, I guess. I don't really care what color the wire is. And very simply just wrap it around a couple of times. And that'll help to make a mechanically strong connection. Okay, so now we can peel this one out. This is our positive wire. And you'll notice I'm not leaving tons of excess, because once you're in the wing it's a little bit tricky to protect this stuff, so you don't want tons. You can also see kind of where we had damaged the cable here. When I was separating them, I got a little slit in it. So I'm going to actually use that as my point for stripping from. Right there. See where I caught it, guys? Okay. And pull it back. And obviously if you were to heat this, that would relax back. So if you happen to heat it before you get your wires together, then you might have a little bit of trouble. Okay, so I'm just going to do it with the, it was easier with the X-Acto knives than it was to try to do it with the resistor. So with this little dinky wire, it's going to be almost impossible. See, all I'm doing is just spinning that blade, and that makes a little pocket with which to receive the wire. And this one we don't have to strip back or anything. We're just gonna slide it in. See how it's stuck in the middle? Just pull most of the excess through and pull it back onto itself, and just give it a couple of, almost like you're tying a knot, but not like a knot for tons of strength. You're just looking for a knot to kind of give more than one contact point, because this isn't braided, it's just a solid core. Come down and clip that extra. We'll throw that in for next project. Okay, so now we'll just kind of put that clump of extra down. Alright, so this is a fairly easy part, but I want to try to get the focus set up. I know you're out of focus right now, guys, probably. But I just kind of got to do it in this order so that you can see where I want you to see, which is right here. Remember, we got to get the varnish off of there, so you got to let it linger for a second. Not like 10 seconds, like a second or two. And then that'll burn away the varnish. And there you have it. So now you should have a good solid electrical connection, as well as a decent mechanical connection with that little knot. And on top of all that, we never actually opened up the power wire. So that's kind of cool. So what we'll do is we'll go about just part way in, and we'll just double back here so we protect a little portion of it, so that we know for sure it's not going to be shorting out at all. And then we'll take this and we'll just go all the way around the whole bundle this time. So it's like a tap splice. Okay. Now we've got some mechanical protection on that, but not tons and tons and tons of extra. But we do need to poke this down in here now. So obviously you'll want to remember that that's there. Don't forget about it. You'll end up doing something on accident and breaking it. This is very weak. That's the price you pay to make it small and almost indistinguishable from outside. So I'm just using this Q-tip to kind of force those up into the... There's a little crack up there. That should be fine right there. Okay, now we'll just kind of slide this back in where it belongs. And then on the way in, guys, we have to go ahead and reconnect our linkage, which is probably going to be trickier than I expect. Which way do I go with that? Okay, gotta go in this way. In, twist. There you have it. Okay, so we'll get those screws put back in. I carried the screws in from the other room. When we had the video paused, I was searching for everything. When I say everything, I mean the one thing I lost, which is very strange. I'll find it like in a week. But what I'm referring to is the two resistors that looked a little something like this. I soldered them together. I think I even mentioned it in the last video. I picked it up and looked at it, so I'll probably have to review the footage, see if I can remember where the heck I put them. Okay. 2 more screws and we're ready to rock and roll, and then we get a test in. It's really sharp, actually. I like being able to get into the wires. That is so nice. Okay, so now that I've kind of compromised my angle, I have to go to a different type of screwdriver here. You can also just possibly move that aileron a little bit, the servo. Yeah, it doesn't want to move. Okay, don't over torque them, you'll strip them out. The wood, that is. Now, I did notice that 8 got chopped off a little bit, so we have to redo that. Okay, so this is our red wing. We won't need that sticker on there anymore. That's just a piece of vinyl tape. And we may have just enough CA already applied, but we'll wait and see how it turns out. And if somebody were motivated, they could... I'm not sure if I'm going to paint my sharklets, but I'd kind of like to. I wonder if I should try to cut that. Not sure yet. Let's see if we've got the polarity correct and everything working before we get into something else. Okay, so we just got our 2 wires hooked up here. There's your red lights, guys. Aileron's working fine. Flaps working fine. That's pretty cool. Throttle cut's on and tested. Let's put this out here so we can see a little bit better. I don't have any intentions of building this plane just quite yet. Put it back together just quite yet. So we'll just slip it on there temporarily so we can look at it. That looks good. Good forward visibility. From below, really good. From the end, really pretty decent. Could be slightly better. That's kind of what I'm looking at, is there's going to be an obstruction as the light gets blocked by the sharklet. Since that was the only thought, is there's going to be angles where things are going to get blocked on this plane. But they would on a real plane. The problem is, on a real plane, you're not always looking at it from the ground. So now, one other thing I do, don't always do, but I do many times, I will take I'll take a sponge sander and just go rough it up between my layers. And ironically enough, you would think the clear would transmit the light a little bit better, but it doesn't. It doesn't do as good a job as if you rough it up a little bit. It seems to refract the light better. But once you've done that, then you can go back over it a couple of times with CA. It's pretty bright. And you can see when it's up against my hand how much it glows. And I really didn't want to lose this inside the wing. So now looking from the other side, oh yeah, you can definitely see it from a lot of angles. I can shut off the lights, but I don't know that it's going to work real good today because it's during the day. I think the camera misrepresents how bright it actually is. But let's just show you in the darkish. I might be able to make it a little darker. There we go. It's pretty decent brightness. It's not the brightest, I mean, it's not the brightest light I've ever made, but that's pretty good. See, that's what concerns me, is you get this spot right here, but then you'll usually be below, so you'll see it. But then you pick it up right here again, depending on if you're on the bottom, or if you're flying above, or if you're below. But like I said, typically I'm not going to be flying this plane in pitch dark. This is going to be more for when your plane's coming in and you go right below the horizon, and it gives you that moment of darkness. So probably pause it here. We'll pick it back up when we get the other side. The other side is exactly the same, so we'll just do that real quick and we'll come back and show you what it looks like at the end. Alright guys, so we got the green wing done, the red wing done, and then the tail light done. So we're just going to go ahead and check for throttle cut. Sticks down on the correct model. We just have it temped in right now. Yes! By the way, the resistor I lost was the resistors I used for the white light back here. So they never were lost to begin with. I had my 180 ohm resistor out the whole time. Yeah, these red ones are just not super bright. But that was part of the reason why I chose to do it the way I did. If I really don't like the way this works out, I can actually break that off of the wing. Now the tail light would be a little more doing because it's so much more glue surface area. But as you can see, we've got the three colors, and the white one being the most intense, pointed back. The red one looks nice, it's just, shut off the light, see if we can get it dark in here. We'll unplug this light. You can see the green LED quite a bit. The red LED, even from a steeper angle, that's the radio blocking it now. So we'll move that real quick. Oh, and then obviously the ailerons working. But we'll have to see. I mean, it's going to really help for landings and stuff. You can kind of see we'd be looking through the canopy now. The red light's just kind of weak. We'll have to see how that looks. I want that thing to glow all the way around. Turn the light back on. But there you have it, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. Try to get you one more shot here. I gotta put this thing so you can see the tail. That intense tail light. There we go. Thanks for watching, guys. Come back for more. Don't forget to like and subscribe.